The unjoined. You appear like the lurching divinity of Christ, God-man, God-man, like the Quranic word which reveals a dilemma. Is it material or mystical, poetic inspiration or divine revelation? 29 surahs begin with scribal letters, ciphers or sirs, dropped by Gabriel, occult, and non-signifying, huruf, muqatat, figurae, unjoined letters, constellations, some say divine attributes, others an ordering system, some initials of scribes, others Abjad 19, oneness. These are the signs, elemental particles, an initial state of godlessness and immanence, a silent invitation. Just as the words of witness begin with denial, La ilahe, there is no God. The letters pose a challenge, embrace a material silence or recite. Now the next one is called Ulvia Pours Water, and this refers to my grandparents. Elif, Lam, Mim. In the mosquito heat of an Istanbul summer, Ulvia finds me in the kitchen and cackles, tongue loose in her open mouth. I'm a 9-year-old Johnny, doing dishes in a sink of sudsless, soapy water in the small apartment on Kazancı Yokuşu, the steep cobble street of dusty boys kicking stray dogs with plastic sandals. I call her Anneanne, mother, mother, in a language I understand but do not speak, having just arrived from the suburbs to the city of 2 continents where my family resides. Shouts rise from the street. Fruit and vegetable sellers push wooden carts, crying out in the bright sing-song of their trade, Üzüm, üzüm, iki gözüm. Ulvia tells me that Dede, my grandfather, hadn't accounted for my mother when he bought the small family plot of grave sites in the huge Zincirlikuyu cemetery of white tombs and tall green cypresses. She lives in another world, she says. My namesake, Dede, hair shorn close, sits in the living room, his mind faded from Alzheimer's, staring intently or stuttering. He doesn't know me, nor does he recognize my mother. He remembers only one person for whom he calls Ulvi, Ulvi, Ulvi. He's terrifying, Dede, a man who unsettles me. He tosses a balsa wood and paper model plane I've been making out the window. One night, under the light of street lamps, I find it piece by piece, broken wings, the box, a small tube of glue, and instructions on Kazancı Yokuşu as we return from visiting someone, something, Turkish. In broken English, my mother says, your grandfather, he born near Kazan, in Russia, Tatarstan. His family was religious, and his father, Imam. They line up to kiss his hand, you know, on Bayram holiday. Later, Dede sent to Syria to study in Sham, Damascus. And from Sham, he come to Istanbul. He finished degree in physics and chemistry. At that time, family and friend come to Istanbul from Turkestan and bring him money and news. Then, during the First World War, he loses contact with them forever. He was Uzbek and knew Arabic well. He translated the Quran to Old Turkish. He knew Russian. He believed socialism. He gave up religion. He see the world like the scientist does, like I do. But Ulvia tells it differently. Your Dede was devout his whole life. Allah brought us together. I was in a play in Konya dressed in the traditional outfit of a village girl. He saw me there. He asked for my hand. My mother said I should marry him, even though he was 15 years older, because he was alone, a çöpsüz üzüm, a stemless grape. I'd have no mother-in-law to darken my days. We married, then your Aunt Suhal came into the world, then your mother, Meral. Dede translated the Quran from Arabic to Turkish. He was a devout his whole life. Ulviye prays 5 times a day, palms open to he who will be, reading from the Quran Dede had translated. God could be anything, I explained to her later when she visits Detroit after Dede has died. Allah rahmet eylesin. May God rest his soul. God could be a pear, I say. And my mother overhears. What the boy says is true, she says, taking my side. The taxi, an old Marshall Plan Chevy, idles roughly on the cobblestone Kazanji Yokushu. Neighbors and dirty children stare, mouths open, imagining a place called America, where people live the way they do on TV. Eyes wide, they see not us, but time travelers, spacemen. Prayer beads hang from the rearview mirror, jiggling with the engine. The Anatolian doorman asks for a pair of Levi's, and my mother jots down his size. She squares herself to me. Did you say goodbye the way I told you to? I've not yet learned to lie. She sends me against my will up the dank, oval staircase until I find the brass nameplate on the door. Mitatili chemist. I knock and Ulviye opens the door in tears. As instructed, I say, goodbye, Allah Smalavik. And she hugs me until I'm breathless. Dizzy with humility, I kiss her hand and press it to my forehead. Walking past her, I find my grandfather, sitting silently in the living room, now kneeling, now kissing, now pressing his hand, which I traced to my own against my brow. We head toward the old Yeşilköy airport, and through the rear windshield, I see Ulviye's narrow arms and hands. She holds a bucket out the window and pours water after us. This is custom. May you travel like water, but it seems untranslatable, with dissolving meaning, like Dede sitting in his chair, calling out for her touch, Ulvi, Ulvi, Ulvi. Have people been to Turkey? I mean, I know there are a lot of Turks in the house, but so this is a poem that I wrote while traveling in the sort of Black Sea region around Artvin, which is known for its honey. Actually, it's very famous for its honey. And this is called "The Honey Collector Waters My Blood." The honey collector, in the realm of peace, lovingly fed me from various vats of viscous amber-hued nectar, as if to impart his wisdom or to bestow advice. He stabbed his long knife into luminous liquid, describing the rare qualities of each as he did so, the altitude from which it had been collected on the Kachkar Mountains, and the types of flowers whose pollen lent it flavor. Heads of state made special orders for me, you said, as you dragged the dull edge of the knife over my finger. Miraculously, what flowed from the wound wasn't blood, but liquefied amber. As I tasted of each, growing dizzy, you said, my honey, it's like nothing you've ever had. It'll cure whatever ails you, you said. It'll water your blood. Turning to my tourist friends, you added what I could not translate. Bunlar ne anlarlar? What could they possibly understand? This is, people may remember this, but I think it was 2008 or so where we had a kind of cicada event here in, people remember that?
Oh yeah.
So I was very inspired by this for a number of reasons, but in any case. The title of this poem is called The Second Coming of Brood 19 Cicadas, and actually the broods are numbered, and that brood is called Brood 19. I particularly liked it because 19 again is Ebjet, which is kind of a numerical equivalent for Arabic letters that some people read in a mystical way. So 19 refers to oneness, the number 19. A southern Gothic day in August, as profound as it is mundane. Spent cicadas with black-veined wings of celluloid rest on the sidewalk like clues to some hidden apocalypse. The horde lives underground for 13 years and resurfaces in the last judgment of a mass resurrection. Ascending by tree and branch to survive, cicadas break out of the sarcophagi of their bodies as the pale prophets of Brood 19. Marluk, the entomologist, first named them. 19 being the abjad numeral for Vahit, oneness. They live for only a few weeks together as one in the liminal state of Barzakh, a not quite purgatory, droning in agony. White heat, my left arm still aches days and weeks after the tetanus shot, keeps me awake at night, and I can't sleep for the feel of a rusty spike lodged in my shoulder. I wonder then, in the darkness, what is the secret of the cicadas? Their buzz and whir descending like a continuous ezan. Another August day of heat coming from all directions. A wasp enters a cracked window, buzzing in near perfect geometric designs, expecting to reach the outside. Regularly, it lands in a kind of confused anxiety, antennae waving, wings flitting, legs groping for an elusive egress. I open the door, ending its aimlessness. A shadow descends momentarily, leaf-like, but I can't locate its source. Somewhere, silently, Brood 19 returns to the underworld in anticipation of the second coming. There's some really interesting, those of you who study, know a little bit about history, there's some interesting, we lose this, but there's some interesting intersections between the meeting point of Islam and Christianity, especially in the Ottoman Empire, and especially during what's known as the Byzantine-Ottoman transition, but also in that particular geographic area, which is today the Balkans and, and including Istanbul as well. For that reason, when I first studied Turkish literature, I was very surprised to see Turkish Istanbul authors using Christian imagery. It was at first a little bit of a shock, it seemed out of place, but it started to make a bit of sense when I studied a little bit more of the history of that. There's even one scholar who actually does articulate what he calls an Islamo-Christian syncretism. There was a kind of moment of almost mutual acceptance, right? It was so different than what we have today. So I titled this poem "The Resurrection and the Life," and I think it's pretty straightforward. But it begins Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. What kind of crucifixion is this? I thought, walking into the theater. The lights were as bright as those fake Hollywood scenes of ascension. Your arms jutted straight out from your sides. Jesus's. I wore a white disposable jumpsuit with a mask. When my mask slipped, someone from behind raised it over my face so I could maintain my persona. The table started to move about, and shadows flitted with practiced gestures. In a corner, a device with tubes surged with blood. "There's a lot of cord," said the midwife. The sound I heard, the one that annihilated me, came from elsewhere. They held you above the green operating partition. You were wailing, bloody, with black eyes. You froze momentarily in the foreign air of the world, dunya. Arms and legs askew, still connected to your mother. In that instant, I tried to take a picture, which later revealed nothing but the bright, empty space through which you'd entered the world. You were passed from hand to hand, as if in a ritual. I followed your voice. They sprayed you clean, swaddled and capped you. With one diminutive hand, you held my thumb and fell asleep. The new world consisted of sound and light and your blue hands, your cognizant blue hands. This is, when I say from the inside and outside, if you grow up, and I grew up in the Midwest, and you tell people you're Turkish, you get some interesting responses. There's a lot of Orientalism involved in what people's assumptions are about what Turkey is, and and what it is not. But sometimes you'd be going through sort of everyday experiences, and you're struck with a sudden realization that people are looking at you differently than you might see yourself. This is called the phrenectomy, or vampires in Turks. The periodontist, looking overly tired, was on the verge of performing a gum graft in phrenectomy, sawing away a strip of my soft palate with a scalpel and cutting free the membrane under my tongue. She lied to me, telling me that it would be about as painful as burning your mouth with pizza. Who wouldn't want such a procedure? But after the needles and numbing and the operation began, I felt that I was going through a rite of initiation, a bloodletting. The doctor, wearing surgical rubber gloves, began cutting. I could taste the blood, lots of it, my own blood. The assistant was slow with her suction device. The doctor withdrew a blood-splattered hand from my mouth slightly and asked, to put me at ease, to make it seem like I wasn't bleeding profusely, if I had read the best-selling vampire book set in Istanbul. I have it, I gagged out in syllables, on my shelf. It would be of interest to you with your background, she said, adding, I couldn't finish it. I got halfway through. There's a secret in archives and libraries, descriptions of the old city, and a mystery. It was just too long. The vampire myth is set against the background of the Turkish invasion of Europe. There is a historical 15th century link between vampires and Turks and Vlad the Impaler. I felt weak. As if on the verge of fainting, a tingling began in my intestines and forehead. I placed one foot down on the ground to try to orient myself. The vampire blew off the blood and body of others, like the good doctor did, clearly. But maybe like I did as well. This was a disturbing thought, but it felt quite real. Afterward, my tongue was looser, much looser. I had always had a tightly sutured tongue. I could barely stick it out. For days and weeks to come, when I opened my mouth to speak, blood flowed out. Sorry. And I think I will just end with a poem called Odysseus' Scar, which some of you may know. I think that well, you may not know. There's a famous scholar, Erich Auerbach, who wrote one of his most famous works called Mimesis. As an exile in Istanbul, because he was Jewish, he was being persecuted by the Nazis, and Turkey was one of the countries that was opening its doors to Jews who were being persecuted. Many of them actually